Recently, Chinese social media like right now has been abuzz with the phrase kill line. If you know anything about gaming, you know that moment when your HP drops so low that one clean combo is enough to end everything. But at the end of last year, suddenly the word started to mean something else. The idea that a regular guy can still save up these days, honestly, is a joke. One single slip and you can be knocked straight toward the streets, systematically finished off by a one-tap combo. One of the triggers for this massive discussion was the story of a former American child star Tyler Chase, who became just another one of hundreds of thousands of homeless people. Even his former fame couldn't save him from this situation. At the same time, a wave of other concepts has been flooding into Chinese platforms. The fentanyl fold, disco rice, selling blood for groceries, and some black market trade, etc. And also some costs hitting ordinary people. All kinds of bizarre taxes and fees, sky-high student loans, and medical bills. After covering all the expenses, households are left with little margin for error. In America, sudden medical bills, a car accident, unexpected layoff, or any other unplanned expense can lead people into a downward spiral, making them end up on the streets. These uncontrollable factors are enough to become the small combo that executes an average hardworking American. Even though things between the US and China have been icy for a long time, the general vibe toward America in China has stayed surprisingly positive. You can see this in various polls, especially the long-standing fascination with the perfect America depicted in movies and music, which have actually become their textbooks for learning English and understanding the West. Even in early 2025, when TikTok refugees started flinging out to Red Note, many Chinese still thought that the soaring prices and inflation in the US were just temporary and everything's gonna be fine. For a long time, many Chinese believe that America has certain problems like every country, but not this kind of problem actually. But as the kill line concept went viral, they realized that some plot lines they once thought were just for dramatic effects were actually one-to-one horror stories from reality.
When Ursula and I were kids, on our birthday, our stepdad would sell his blood to buy us food.
If you can't afford a doctor, it's better to just spend whatever money you got on weed to help you forget whatever you got.
I don't cry. I sold my tear ducts to an organ bank for cash 2 years ago.
I can't have any caffeine. I have to keep my system clean. I'm doing a drug trial tomorrow.
Max, not one of those places where they use you as a guinea pig to test for side effects of new drugs that go on the market.
Or as I like to call it, getting paid $500 to roll the side effects dice and hope it lands on hallucinations.
These shocks in reality perfectly match those old memories when they were watching American drama. It's sparkling maybe the first large-scale fatal shattering of the American dream in China. You may ask, hasn't America always been like this? Well, for many, the kill line is the first concept that really shows how thin the margin for error is for the average American. It's like entering a kill zone where the system gives you zero room for a single mistake. A typical family's paycheck might seem decent, but the spending structure can be extremely rigid. After stripping away the mandatory payments for credit cards or years-old student loans, plus the rising cost of living, and all those bizarre taxes and fees like loan maintenance fines, high HOA fees, or property taxes, the space for error keeps shrinking. To keep this life afloat, many people wind up working 2 or 3 side hustles, constantly clocking in and grinding like spinning top just to stay upright. But even then, there's almost no safety net. Once a sudden emergency hits, let's just say a $2,200 bill for an emergency ambulance ride, including treating fees, even a minor surgery. That amount may not be enough to crush a middle-class person on its own, but it can trigger the first domino. In a credit-based society, once this bill causes your cash flow to snap, your credit score takes a dive. Right after that, your car may be repossessed because of missed loan payment, and in an environment where public transit almost non-existent, because clearly now every city is Chicago, New York. Losing your car means losing the physical ability to get to the workplace. Losing your job means that you can't cover rent or your mortgage.
Please let me go to work!
Without a fixed address, you can't even find a job. Without a job, you have no way to afford a new house, which makes finding a job even harder. This death loop can take a decent person from the peak of their class to being homeless in less than just 3 months.
Life can really take a turn on you quickly.
A year ago, Smith was let go from his job.
You don't even know what to say.
And 30 days past due became 60, then 90, eventually homeless.
Off and on, yes. Staying in hotels, couches, cars, anything you can find.
The sheer precision of this system is exactly why the kill line theory is so shocking. Meanwhile, most parents and friends have their own messes to deal with. Sometimes they can even get their shit together. So the help in this situation they can actually offer is always temporary and limited, and normally won't last long. This leaves these people with zero safety net, causing them to sink into the mud and never get up again. Statistically, none of this is new. It's actually very well documented. The FPL, or federal poverty level, is the benchmark for the whole US welfare system. It's It's the line that decides whether you can get Medicare or SNAP. Basically, it's the government's way of deciding if you're poor enough to deserve a safety net. Here's the kicker. If your income is even $1 above that line, the government won't bother to catch you. You're effectively on your own with no safety net at all. The FPL basically targets two survival needs. Can you afford to eat, or can you afford a doctor? The numbers are brutal. Roughly $15,600 a year for a single person, or $32,000 for a family of four. Around 42 million people currently rely on food stamps. But as Obama once highlighted, this crisis hit a staggering peak of over 47 million. That's 1 in 5 children who can't even get basic nutrition without help. Now Medicaid covers even more, over 72 million people, because food stamps are much harder to get. The system doesn't just look at your income, it digs into your savings, your family, or even your willingness to work. It's designed to shut people out. Medicaid is a little bit lenient, especially for kids, but for food stamps, the gate is narrow and the screening is relentless. But here's the thing, even if you are lucky enough to get it, you fall straight into a poverty trap. The system actually punishes you for trying to improve your life. As we said, the moment you earn a little more and cross the line, the government yanks away thousands of dollars in benefits instantly. It's a math problem with no escape. Staying on welfare is often more stable than taking a job that keeps you poor anyway. So millions end up locked at the bottom. They're too afraid to climb out because they can't afford to lose the only thing keeping them alive. Beyond the official FPL, researchers have come up with a much more realistic concept, the ALICE line. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. In the real world, this is probably the closest thing we have to an actual kill line. People on this line usually earn about double the FPL, maybe $30,000 for a single person or $70,000 for a family. These are respectable people. Teachers, nurses, white-collar workers, they don't qualify for aids, but after rent, car payments, and childcare, they have zero left. They look middle class, but because their income is too high for welfare and too low to save. One illness, one job loss, and they can be easily hit by a single combo that sends them sliding past the ALICE line, past the FPL, and straight onto the streets because they can't make rent. According to the Fed, about 40% of Americans can come up with $400 in an emergency. That's nearly 150 million people walking on a razor-thin tightrope. These are the people living in the shadow of a kill line. For them, it only takes a $400 bill to trigger the end of everything. Now, you might think, once they meet FPL standards, can they just go to the government for help? Well, here's the reality. The US welfare system might serve as a safety net, but its capacity is very much limited. The bar is impossibly high, and the coverage is incomplete, and the application process is very long. Often the system won't even look at you until your credit is ruined, your car is gone, and you're already sleeping on the street. By the time you're eligible for help, your life is already over. This is because the system is designed for post-disaster rescue, not pre-disaster prevention. Food stamps and Medicaid are strictly audited, have limited spots, and move slowly. By the time you're actually in danger, that help is just dropped in the bucket. For anyone sliding from the ALICE line toward the FPL, the reality is simple. Just because you're falling doesn't mean the system is going to catch you.
I had nowhere else to go, and I'm too afraid to sleep outside on the street.
God, you're spoiled.
So this creates a desperate double lock. When you are teetering on the ALICE line, the edge of a middle class, the welfare system just watches coldly, no prevention. It waits until you're shattered into pieces before you even consider intervening. Once you're shattered and lucky enough to get benefits, the cliff effect locks you at the bottom. If you try to climb up just a little, you lose your benefits and fall even harder, afraid to climb. And once you slip through the cracks and end up on the streets, the real nightmare begins. You lose your fixed address, and without the stress, you're invisible. You start missing government letters, bank statements, and legal forms. In a system built on paperwork, losing your mailbox means losing your existence. Most social benefits are tied directly to where you live. If you can't prove you're a resident of a specific county, the DHS, the local welfare office, won't even look at your file. Everything gets stuck right there. You can't get your food stamp card, you miss your Medicaid renewal notices, and those critical unemployment checks or debit cards. So your credit system collapses, and your bank accounts get frozen. US banking laws require accounts to be linked to a physical address, not just a PO box. If a statement is returned or they found your address is valid, the bank may close your account to avoid money laundering risks. And here's the final nail in the coffin. Without an address, you can't get a job. Most employers require a physical address just to file your tax forms. Without a W-4, you literally can't be hired legally. Furthermore, with a trashed credit score, nobody wants to provide services jobs or housing to someone seen as unreliable. No government mail equals defaulting on your rights. No bills equals no proof you are a legal resident. No bank card equals no way to receive aid or any paycheck. This is why many homeless people have to rely on charities just to receive mail. But these resources are incredibly scarce, and letters get lost all the time. The even darker reality is that using a shared address on a job application is an immediate red flag. Most HR managers or even automatic systems can spot these addresses in a second. One look at Google Maps and they know you are living on Skid Row. And also with a collapsed credit score, you are a high-risk candidate who can't even pass a basic background check. The only thing you can desperately try to maintain is your image, and that one suit you still own. When everything else is gone, the only thing you can desperately cling to is your image. Sometimes a well-pressed suit can literally save your life, where your stomach is empty. It's completely surreal. Once you hit the streets, you practically vanish. It's what we call the administrative death. You become a ghost in the system and a person without an identity. From there, the spiral tightens. To numb the cold and the shame, many fall into the trap of drugs or alcohol, spiraling into fentanyl crisis. Their mental state shatters, and the odds of ever climbing back out can be very low. Why is this high-intensity competitive logic so widely accepted? It's because it's deeply rooted in the core values of a culture. From a perspective shaped by the protective work ethic, wealth is often seen as a sign of virtue and being chosen, while poverty is easily interpreted as personal laziness or moral falling. It's the logic of if you're rich, you're right in everything and virtuous. If you're poor, it serves you right since your lazy ass deserves this. This wealth equals morality mindset allows society to pursue efficiency without any guilt. It actually creates a breeding ground for social Darwinism, where the rich are glorified, and those who fall are dismissed as some self-destructive rejects. And telling someone to go get a job has become one of the most vicious insults online. In this context, taking from the earners to feed the fallen is often viewed as a penalty on virtue. This deep cultural logic explains why systematic relief always shows up after the disaster rather than as prevention. Barbara Ehrenreich once described the American dream as something that demands not just hard work, but near perfection. Because for the working poor, even a small mistake can be disastrous. Matthew Desmond, a sociologist and the author of Evicted, argues that without a stable home, poverty becomes a self-reinforcing condition. In his work, housing is not just shelter, it's the foundation that allows everything else to function. Without it, poverty will become a vicious cycle. Thomas Piketty in Capital in the 21st Century proved it with the hard data. Capital grows faster than your paycheck. Wealth naturally flows toward capital. The rich get richer not just because they work harder, but because their money works faster. What does that actually mean? It means that the scale line is not static, it's usually rising. Every year the bar for survival gets higher, where your wages stay glued to the floor. The system is literally outrunning you, pushing the margin higher and higher until it claims everyone who can keep up. This structural imbalance explains why economic pressure keeps intensifying, pushing more people closer to the margin, where a single shot can trigger collapse. In mobile games, a character's resources are collected after they die, but in reality, those who fall below the kill line often find that the system extracts every last bit of value from them, right up to the very end in a similar way. Even though a significant portion of these homeless people once worked hard and lived respectful lives, once they fall, they receive almost zero sympathy. Instead, they face systematic cleansing and erasure. They came into this world as somebody's everything, only to leave it without making a sound. There's a chilling phenomenon at play here. Every year, the influx of people into the US, including undocumented immigrants, is massive. Yet the total number of the homeless people remains relatively stable year after year. This suggests that this stability isn't necessarily built on inclusion, but sometimes on an efficient kill rate. Old losers fade away silently in the corners of the streets, and their spots are quickly taken by new, hopeful immigrants or the ones just got broke. It's an endless cycle, year after year. The machine keeps running, while they are simply erased from the system.